On today's episode of Locked On Oilers, Warren Foegele is back, what to do with Darnell Nurse, and we go down south for the Bakersfield Condors Report. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Oilers podcast. I am your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to start off with the Darnell Nurse deal and everything that came out of last night's game against the St. Louis Blues, as there's a lot to talk about from that game and a lot of questions now being raised all around. That'll come up in just a second. But also on today's episode, we're going to take a look forward at the Anaheim Ducks game tomorrow afternoon. It's a matinee, and Warren Foegele seems to potentially be back for the Oilers, or as Jay Woodcroft put it, available. We will talk about that a little later. But also to wrap up today's episode, we are going to go through the Bakersfield Condors Report, as they have snuck out a win, but they're also currently playing as of me recording this. We will talk about that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Alrighty, let's get into the game from last night, as the Edmonton Oilers did lose 4-3 in a shootout, as no Oiler was able to score in the shootout. But as Darnell Nurse put it, they shouldn't have been in that situation. In fact, he is saying that the Oilers shouldn't have been in that situation in regards to the offside call. Now, we remember just last year, and in fact the playoffs, of just how controversial offsides calls can be. A la, Cale Makar. And now we see another controversial offside call, and it goes against the Oilers. And now Twitter is aflame, Connor McDavid is mad, and Darnell Nurse is disappointed. I'll say quickly on this that I think there should be, as Connor McDavid said, more clarity on the definition of what possession is, because the viral clip that's been going around of Connor McDavid's offside call, quote unquote, has been going hand in hand with the Ovechkin goal from a couple years ago as well. That was called a goal. The exact same play that Connor McDavid pulled off. The exact same play that, by the way, Connor McDavid pulls off all the time. Connor McDavid always makes this play at the line. But now all of a sudden it's offside. I understand possession is subjective, but in that type of situation, you can't allow a decision like that to get into the way of essentially the game, because that is the game. The Oilers scored the game-winning goal, but either way, like Darnell Nurse said, the Oilers shouldn't have been in that situation. The Oilers scored the first goal. We're up by 2, but the big thing for the Edmonton Oilers over the last couple of wins is a mature third period. The Edmonton Oilers didn't do that against the St. Louis Blues, and look what happened. They lost. But the issue is that the Edmonton Oilers didn't have a mature third period because their mature players didn't play maturely. Not only in the third period, but throughout the game. And that is where a lot of the blame is being put on Darnell Nurse. The first goal of the game was because of a stupid play by a lapse of judgment, I guess would be a better way, on Darnell Nurse's side, I guess, where he just threw an absolute muffin. It bounced off. He went to clear it up the wall. It ended up bouncing up into the middle of the ice, and Jordan Kyrou roofs it past Stuart Skinner. Skinner had no shot. However, it wouldn't be the only time Darnell Nurse would turn the puck over, and it would cause or end up being in the back of the Oilers' net. As Vladimir Tarasenko would go on to score with about 20 seconds left in the game after Darnell Nurse goes and throws another muffin around the boards, It's turned over again with 20 seconds to go while the Oilers are on the power play. And Tarasenko, one of the deadliest shooters that this past generation has seen, ties the game. Goes into overtime, which should be automatic for the Oilers, but now the Oilers have their first loser point of the year. So what can you do with Darnell Nurse? He's your number one defenseman. In fact, he has played the most amount of minutes than any other Edmonton Oilers so far this year. He has played 587 minutes and 25 seconds so far this year. To compare, Connor McDavid has played 501 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, I'm not good at math, but that means that Darnell Nurse has played 86 more minutes than Connor McDavid. Now, I'm not going to say that's an issue, but what is an issue is that Darnell Nurse is leading the Edmonton Oilers in ice time. He's averaging about 24 minutes a game. And are the Edmonton Oilers really better when he's on the ice? Has Darnell Nurse really given the Edmonton Oilers any reason to believe that he is any better or the Oilers are any better when he is on the ice? So far, no. When you take a look at the advanced stats of those goals for and goals against per 60 minutes, he's sitting either just slightly above average on the team on like 9th or slightly below average, about 12th, 14th. And then you take a look at the save percentage, and the save percentage for goaltenders while Darnell Nurse is on the ice only sits at about 91%. So 0.910. That sits again around that middle of the grid mark. That's not good enough for your number one defenseman. Now, his average shift length last night was about 57 seconds. Is that too? He had over 100 shifts at about 57 seconds. Over 100 shifts. And it's not like these mistakes were made very late in the game. They were made very late in the game, but they were also made all throughout the game as well. So then you look at what happened to Evan Bouchard earlier this season, and he got the bench in the third period, but now Darnell Nurse doesn't. Now, Jay Woodcroft said in his press conference today, like he said, you have a lot of experienced players on the ice, and that goes hand in hand with the mature third period. However, that didn't happen. Darnell Nurse has been on a very tough streak recently. I think he's played better than what fans will give him credit for, but he needs to step up his game. 44 hits so far this year for a player who is massive, is impeding when he does throw his body around, and imposing is probably the better word. But only 44 hits. Jesse Puljujärvi has more hits than Darnell Nurse this year. 32 giveaways so far this year, 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points in 31 games. Darnell Nurse is trying to do too much. I mean, there was one shift you saw him on the ice. He had Cody Ceci right next to him. What did Darnell Nurse do when the Oilers were making a change? Just fired it into the Oilers bench, around the Oilers bench, and hoped the Edmonton Oilers would pick up the puck. On the far blue line, when the Oilers were making a change, he turned it over and the puck goes the other way. Then he does get the puck back, and you know what he does instead of getting it out? Tried to pass it up the wing to another player who was covered, when once again he had Cody Ceci wide open right next to him, who would have an easier way to get the outlet pass. He's not doing the right things because he's trying to do too much. He needs to simplify his game. Get back to the Darnell Nurse that, well, once was the player that signed that contract. Is he worth $9 million? No, probably not. But you have to also realize, the market that he was signing that contract in, as he wasn't the only player who was signing at $9 million at the time, especially for a number one defenseman. The other thing as well with Darnell Nurse is that if you don't sign Darnell Nurse to that deal in a lucrative deal, well, other teams all around the league, every team in this league is going to want a Darnell Nurse. Every team. So what? Are you just not going to have a number one defenseman? Because here's your options if you don't have Darnell Nurse: Evan Bouchard, Philip Broberg, or Tyson Barrie. Are you cringing yet? I hope your body feels disgusting after hearing those three options as your potential number one defenseman if the Edmonton Oilers don't sign Darnell Nurse to that deal. Because, hey, you want your body to feel even grosser? Because if he doesn't sign that contract, and if the Edmonton Oilers don't give him that $9 million, you know who does? The Toronto Maple Leafs. And then you want to start talking about the utter deterioration of the Edmonton Oilers core? Then goes Connor. Then goes Leon. Nuge probably retires or goes somewhere else. And then where's your core? It's very easy to talk down on this contract right now. But if it didn't happen, where would the Edmonton Oilers be today? Because I want you to seriously answer that question. Seriously answer that question. Am I defending the contract? Yes, a little bit. A little bit. Do I think it should have happened? Do I think he should be getting paid $9 million? No. However, you do not understand the business and understand the industry and understand the market if you don't sit there and realize that that contract had to be signed for the Edmonton Oilers to currently still be considered a playoff contender. Even right now, a contender. Because right now, if the Oilers don't sign that contract with Darnell Nurse, he's somewhere else. And the Edmonton Oilers, he's somewhere else today. He's somewhere else at the moment that you are listening to this show, this conversation. He is currently playing for a different NHL team. And your number one defenseman is Brett Kulak? There you go. That's the issue right there. So 31 games into this big contract, Darnell Nurse has said himself that he needs to figure it out. And like Jay Woodcroft said, the next game against the Anaheim Ducks he's excited for because he wants to see how these players react. And that is exactly where we are going into on this next segment as the Edmonton Oilers face off against the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow at 2 p.m. Another matinee here at Rogers Place. A lot of chatter around that game, despite the fact the Oilers are playing like the worst team in the league. But the Edmonton Oilers do have a familiar face potentially returning to the lineup there. We will talk about that in just a second. But first, today's episode is brought to you by the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few become a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end and people are starting to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby and you can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Alrighty, as we move on to the second period of today's episode, we're taking a look at the Edmonton Oilers and the Anaheim Ducks as Warren Foegele is available to the Edmonton Oilers, or as Jay Woodcroft says, he's an available player for the Edmonton Oilers in this one. So the Oilers had a light skate today at Rogers Place. Not really any solid lines. Ryan McLeod also getting some skating time as well with the Edmonton Oilers. That is positive today. The Edmonton Oilers also put Brad Malone on waivers. And that is why the sneaking suspicion is that Warren Foegele will be back in the lineup against Anaheim. So let's have some fun here. As the Edmonton Oilers have had the same lines for about the last week or so, we haven't had a lot of parity when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers lineup. So let's have some fun. Let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers forward core, or the lines, and what we might see from the Edmonton Oilers against the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow. I think the first line will stay the same with Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman. But I think this is where we see the change. I think now Janmark has had a lot of time on the second line, and I haven't hated his play on the second line. However, Warren Foegele, at the time of his injury, was kind of getting hot. He was on a little bit of a hot streak, playing really well, and unfortunately did get injured. So I do think the Edmonton Oilers will plug him back on the second line, put him alongside Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Kyler Yamamoto, and then we start to get a little bit jumpy here. I think Matthias Janmark will be placed on the third line alongside James Hamblin and Jesse Puljujärvi. And then the fourth line I could see being something of Costin, Holloway, and Ryan. However, Devin Shore has played very well over these last couple of games. He's a fantastic penalty killer. He is the best Edmonton Oiler when it comes to goals against per 60 minutes, and at both 5-on-5 and in all situations. And that line in general between Costin, Shore, and Ryan has been fantastic altogether. So I'm curious if the Edmonton Oilers start to go with a Janmark, Holloway, Puljujärvi line and have Hamblin scratched. Because now you're starting to see the Edmonton Oilers lineup again start to get healthy. Foegele will be back here. It sounds like what's his name? Ryan McLeod, will be probably back within the next year when the calendar turns to 2023. So there's not a lot of games before the calendar turns. What could we really see? I think this is now probably the time where those three players, Shore, Hamblin, and Holloway, are really fighting for their spot on the team. Shore maybe not so much because he has been pretty solid again defensively in his own end, a very good penalty killer. But Hamblin and Holloway especially. Hamblin's played pretty decent, but Dylan Holloway, especially over these last couple of weeks, has really played well. And especially in those games where the Edmonton Oilers just haven't really had the legs, he's been a fresh look for the Edmonton Oilers. So I wouldn't honestly mind a line where Janmark is centered by Dylan Holloway. And of course, Jesse Puljujärvi on the other side. But again, Hamblin's played well. Holloway hasn't had a lot of time this year up the middle. Hamblin has so far. Do you kind of give the edge to Hamblin in that sense? Or, I'll be honest with you. A line of Janmark, Holloway, and Puljujärvi would be very exciting to me, honestly. But can they do that? Is that feasible? I don't know. Then the defensive pairings will be the same right now. Darnell Nurse with Cody Ceci, Brett Kulak with Tyson Barrie, and Philip Broberg with Evan Bouchard. You are really hoping that defense I don't know. I was going to say stays together, but just more or less does their job, especially against a not very good Anaheim Ducks team. We'll talk about the Anaheim Ducks in just a second, but also no confirmation on who will start in net for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm leaning towards Jack Campbell, but as Jay Woodcroft said, we will find out tomorrow. So either way, let's take a look on the other side, on the Anaheim Ducks side. Let's take a look at their lineup, as currently it looks like they might go with an 11-7 formation against the Edmonton Oilers. Adam Henrique lines up alongside Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry. Frankie Vatrano with one of the Strome brothers, Dylan Strome, I believe that is. No, Dylan Strome is over it. Is it Dylan Strome? It is Dylan Strome. Is it Dylan Strome? Okay, I just double checked. It's Ryan Strome. Dylan Strome's in Washington. I always get these two Stromes mixed up. I mean, toss in Matthew in a couple of years, and that's just going to be hell. Sorry, I apologize for that. It is Ryan Strome. Ryan Strome is up the middle alongside, as mentioned, Frankie Vatrano on his left side and Jakob Silverberg on the right side. Maxime Comtois on the third line, potentially a player that the Edmonton Oilers are interested in. He is being centered by Mason McTavish, and Leeson is on the far side there. And then the fourth line, the modified fourth line, Jason Magna, which the Ducks picked up from the Colorado Avalanche just a couple of weeks ago, and Sam Carrick, not Connor Carrick, Sam Carrick also on that fourth line there. Now on the back end, Cam Fowler and Dmitry Kulikov, yes, former Edmonton Oiler Dmitry Kulikov, make up the top pairing. Benoit is alongside John Klingberg. So a couple of players to potentially watch if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan there, with Cam Fowler and John Klingberg. Euro Vakanainen is alongside Kevin Shattenkirk, and Nathan Beaulieu is the seventh defenseman there. Lucas Dostal did get the last start on yesterday, so it seems like John Gibson will most likely get the start against the Oilers tomorrow, but we shall wait and see on confirmation. Now, as mentioned, a couple of names if you are an Oilers fan to watch out for in this one, as the Oilers have been tied to a couple of these players, Maxime Comtois being one of them, Cam Fowler and John Klingberg as well. However, some conversation coming out today potentially that the Edmonton Oilers might be a little concerned about Klingberg's play in his own end. That's good. That's what you want from a player you're potentially adding. However, you have to, again, if the Edmonton Oilers do pay that price for Joel Edmondson, I'll puke. I will viciously puke. Because Borgo, a first in itself is disgusting. Also adding Borgo and potentially Puljujarvi, not only is that an overpay, but B, those are also pieces that you can add in a potential trade down the road as well. And I'm telling you right now, Joel Edmondson is not worth it. Not worth it. So, Klingberg, maybe. Fowler, he's getting old. I'm not sure about it, but couple of storylines to follow in that one. The Edmonton Oilers are now 17-13-1 on the year and winless when it comes to matinees so far this year. So could be a potential time for the Anaheim Ducks to snag a win here in Edmonton. Man, those matinees have not been friendly to the Edmonton Oilers this year. Hopefully they can break that record on Saturday. As mentioned, 2 p.m. puck drop at Rogers Place. Right now, unconfirmed as to who the starters are, but my suspicions are Jack Campbell and John Gibson. Alrighty, we're going to stay with the California theme and head down south to Bakersfield as we end today's episode with our Bakersfield Condors Report. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen today. Now for your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts. Alrighty, just coming in on the phone now as we are recording this. A little breaking news for me, but by the time you're hearing this, you probably would have heard it, but it does pertain to the Bakersfield Condors, as the Condors will be without Marcus Niemelainen for the foreseeable future, as the Edmonton Oilers have called up Marcus Niemelainen to the big squad. He will join the Edmonton Oilers, and by the time the Oilers do activate Warren Foegele, the Edmonton Oilers will have a full 23-man roster for the first time this year. So Marcus Niemelainen will be out of the lineup. In fact, he won't be in the lineup tonight when the Bakersfield Condors face off against the Ontario Reign, the Los Angeles Kings affiliate there. But either way, let's get into the Bakersfield Condors report, as this week the Condors have been a little up and down. A very good, a very interesting game back and forth between them and the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and then a tough loss against the San Jose Barracuda. Let's start off with the big win against the Coachella Valley Firebirds, as they won 5-3 in overtime, as it was a Carter Savoy goal late in the third that would take them to overtime, and Seth Griffith, the leading point getter for the Bakersfield Condors, would go on to win it in overtime. Let's go through some of the goal scorers in this one. Seth Griffith not only ended the game in scoring, but also started it, as he scored his 5th goal of the season. Tyler Benson getting his first of 4 assists this past weekend on the first goal from Seth Griffith. Greg McKegg also getting his 5th assist on the first goal. Then Xavier Bourgault scoring shortly after that one, his 8th goal of the year. Jason Demers also getting his 8th assist alongside. There's Tyler Benson's 2nd assist of the night, 4th on the year. Then Justin Bailey, who's been a pretty solid acquisition so far for the Condors, gets on the board once again, his 4th of the year. Xavier Bourgault getting his 5th assist of the year on that one, and Olivier Rodrigue getting an assist as well. Now, this isn't his first assist of the season, not his second one either. It's his 3rd assist on the year. Olivier Rodrigue, who would have thought? He gets an assist on the 3rd goal, which would go on to lead the Condors to tie it up late in the 3rd, as Carter Savoy scores his 3rd goal of the season. Yanni Caldas and Tyler Benson getting the assists on that one. Benson's 3rd assist of the game there, his 5th assist on the season, alongside Yanni Caldas' 4th on the year. And then, as mentioned, Seth Griffith would go on and win it in overtime with his 6th goal on the year. Jason Demers and Luke Esposito getting the assists on that one. Demers 9th and Espo's 8th. Now, the Barracuda would go on to play the Condors, I meant to say the Condors would go on to play the Barracuda, but either way, it means the exact same thing. However, the Barracuda would go on to win this one, beat the Condors 3-1, as Darian Keel getting the only goal of the game for the Condors, the first goal of the game as well, but the Condors could not convert at all throughout the game. Darian Keel, as mentioned, getting the only goal. Seth Griffith getting his 16th assist on the year, and Tyler Benson getting his 4th assist of the weekend, 6th so far this year. As mentioned, the Bakersfield Condors are currently playing the Ontario Reign as we speak. Puck drop is right around right now. Anyways, so no update on that right now. Potentially a little later on in the day. But the big update for them tonight, no Marcus Niemelainen, as they did have a little bit of a surplus, as Vincent Desharnais is playing in his first game since November 12th. Now, this game is the final game for the Bakersfield Condors before Christmas. Their final home game, before Christmas. So they won't be playing in Bakersfield until after Christmas. But as mentioned, Vincent Desharnais is back in the lineup. Big for the Condors as he hasn't played since November 12th. And with Vincent Desharnais in the lineup, the Condors are undefeated. So a big ad for them. Olivier Rodrigue gets the net tonight. We shall see how he keeps his pretty solid season going. Let's take a look at the stats. A quick little update at the stat board right now for the Condors. Seth Griffith leading the team in points with a 22-point season. Very solid start to the year. And surprising name here. Second on the team in points, Xavier Bourgault, 13 points, Michael Kesselring bringing up the rear in third with 11. Then Luke Esposito got 10 points so far this year, fourth on the team, and 3 players tied with 9 points, James Hamblin, Phil Kemp, and Jason Demers. Now let's head to the goals, and the hotness keeps going on for Xavier Bourgault as he leads the Condors in goals. 8 goals so far this year. Actually, he's tied right now with Michael Kesselring with 8 goals, and then Seth Griffith in third right now with 6. Tyler Tullio, a sneaky little, I believe he was a 4th round pick, maybe 5th round pick of the Edmonton Oilers in 2020 from the Oshawa Generals. He is a Kurlock, B. Kurlock. I know him by his Twitter handle. He just joined Oilers Nation to talk a little bit about the prospects in the Oilers organization. And Tullio was one of those names that he mentioned in his most recent article, as if he is, and this is what really stood out to me about Tullio. If Tullio does make the Edmonton Oilers at some point, as Kurlock said, he's going to be a fan favorite. In a game that the game was kind of quiet in, the Condors were out of it, outstepped Tullio, and the energy in the building really started to turn around. A big hit by him, just a big motor on him as well. And as mentioned, 4 goals so far this year, tied for 4th on the team right now, actually tied for 3rd technically for the Condors, and he's tied with Justin Bailey, who's on a heater. So a name to watch out for right now for the Edmonton Oilers, Tyler Tullio. He's kind of a stronger Kyler Yamamoto type, if that makes sense. He's able to do a lot of things well and the little things well. And as mentioned, he was in the rookie camp recently, and he mentioned that if he wants to make the Edmonton Oilers, and the Edmonton Oilers have made this clear to him as well, if he wants to be an NHLer, it's one of those guys who just a bottom 6, top 9 type of guy, a third pairing or third line type guy. Just a name to watch out for. He realizes what he needs to do, and he realizes his role, and so far this year in Bakersfield, he has been excelling at it. So Tyler Tullio, a name to watch out for. And as mentioned, bringing up the rear in 5th place in 4 goals right now for the Condors is Justin Bailey. Now we'll wrap up with the assists so far this year. Seth Griffith with 16 assists. He is on an absolute tear this year. Very impressive. I remember people commenting on some of the videos earlier this year in training camp going, oh, just get Griffith out of camp. He's so boring to watch. Well, I guess Bakersfield couldn't wait for Griffith to return. Jason Demers is second on the team in assists with 9. Luke Esposito's got 8, and then 3 players tied with 6, and James Hamblin, Phil Kemp, and Tyler Benson, who just joined the team as well, 4 assists in this past weekend. And Xavier Bourgault brings it up in 6th with 5. As mentioned, I almost said the OKC Barons. There you go. The Bakersfield Condors face off against the Ontario Reign tonight. An 8 o'clock puck drop in Edmonton, 7 o'clock over in Bakersfield. But also tomorrow, the Edmonton Oilers face off against the Anaheim Ducks. A 2 o'clock puck drop in that one. We shall see if maybe the Edmonton Oilers and the Anaheim Ducks have a new player before the Ducks leave Edmonton. Either way, we shall wrap it up there, folks. We shall be back next week on Monday, which will lead into a little bit of a Christmas break. But either way, I can't wait to see you then. And until I see you then, I hope all weekend you can play La Bamba, baby.